Bob. We're going to have a quick little primer to get you all ready for it. But as I listen to Steve McDonald talk, I think about the fine that SDG&E had for misleading about the route. And I feel like when I hear reports of them being out on property owners' land saying, well, we're getting ready for construction and we want to hurry up this eminent domain and get it done, it's cruel and it's misleading. But if you do hear reports, that's where the community coalition comes into play. So we need to be talking to each other and letting each other know what's going on so that we can be a united front. So if you watched KSI on Monday night, you might have caught this little show from Turko Files.
KUSI News, Turko Files.
Several East County residents called KUSI's Michael Turko about survey crews who are working on SDG&E's Sunrise Powerlink.
Turko says they're accusing San Diego Gas and Electric of using heavy-handed tactics to force their way onto people's property. Turko?
It's tempting to say this is one of those cases where nobody wants it because it's too close to their own property, but these things have to be handled a certain way, and it doesn't look like that's happening here. Well, a lot of backcountry residents are against the Sunrise Powerlink, no surprise there, especially if it crosses their land. Now some of them say they're being intimidated by SDG&E survey crews. Here's a guy who says he tried to keep them off his own property, but had to give in when they threatened to have him arrested, hauled off, and taken directly to jail. There's not much support for the Sunrise Powerlink in El Monte Valley. It's supposed to come right through here on land that's still recovering from the wildfires.
At least this view, I mean, the 1,000-seater fires can't change that view. The same view the Indians had, and that's how I felt about it. And then I got this thing in the mail.
Jody Morgan says the next day surveyors showed up, along with a so-called special agent from SDG&E's parent company.
You're standing right here on your driveway, and you're telling these guys, I don't want you here.
Right. And I said, can you show me something that says that? Can you show me my name or my address or my parcel number, anything that shows me that? And they said, well, they showed a code, and he said that allows us to come on and do the testing for any place.
Now, California's Code of Civil Procedure can be read that way, but whether it applies here is not entirely clear. That Sunrise Powerlink will come right up this valley. But in order to do that, they have to acquire the land by eminent domain, because right now, they don't own it. It belongs to Jody Morgan.
They said, our next step is we go get the sheriff, and you will go to jail. And I said, well, never been to jail before. But then they kept saying, yes or no, we're going to go right now. And then he said, by the way, there's an automatic $500 fine.
SDG&E says they try to make appointments in advance and work with landowners, but
we do have the responsibility to carry on with preliminary work for the project.
You have a legal right to do that?
Yes, we do have a right to gain access to property. This is a project that's been approved by the PUC.
But not everyone agrees with that.
UCAN has filed an appeal against the CPUC, and there have been 3 other groups that have filed appeals against the BLM record of decision.
So this route is not a done deal?
No.
And yet they're steamrolling their way through private property?
And now they're having a lot of coercion to just go ahead and rush eminent domain.
This guy says he was actually threatened with a big fine and going to jail right then.
We would never threaten, our intention would not be to threaten anybody. That's certainly not what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of moving forward with a very important infrastructure project for the entire region's energy reliability.
Well, the East County Community Action Coalition is sponsoring a workshop for property owners later this week. They'll have lawyers on hand to answer specific questions about whether or not they're allowed to go on there or not, and give them some advice on property rights issues.
What a great story.
You can read this Civil Procedure Code a lot of different ways. See what happens.
I'm sorry. Now get out of here before we throw you out or call the cops. Thanks, Turko.
I was hoping you would see the end of that, because at the very end, he interviewed an agent or somebody from SDG&E, and he said, what if, I think he interviewed him before he came out to our property, And he said something like, what about pressuring people and threatening jail and fines and so forth? And the agent, SDG&E agent, said, oh, we wouldn't do that. And then he sort of backed up. And somebody drew that to my attention yesterday and said, he backed up and then said, well, that's not our policy. And I think the reason is because when he did do that, there were at least 10 people standing there that heard the conversation, that he did threaten to take me to jail and the $500 fine. And since Vanessa said how many people saw this, how many people were at the first time? It was right after I found out, at least, that this power line was going to go through, and we went to the Lakeside Planning Committee, and Myrna and I did this little picture thing. I did it 2 days after I found out about it, and some of the people on the planning committee wanted to know, what are these towers going to look like from the ground? And they said, well, we'll show you from the Google. And then we showed this, and that's the same picture that you have seen. I went in town and took pictures. I've never done this before, and I'm not a speaker, but but that night, it was like 3 days afterwards, and I had a real hard time keeping my composure. As a matter of fact, I didn't. And so what I'm trying to say is that hopefully, not promising, I'll be able to keep my composure now, because then I was just so overwhelmed by it, and I still am. Now I'm just kind of mad. Now I'm mad, you know. So they got their hands full. I think they got their hands full with Laura and Vanessa and Dennis and a few others. At any rate, I thought I was going to have another chance to go to jail Tuesday, because I got an email from my right-of-way agent, Colleen Fino, SDG&E. She said there'll be a crew out on Tuesday. I've had a number of crews out there. There'll be a crew out on Tuesday. And with some advice, I went ahead and emailed back. I usually don't do that. I just try to stop them if I can. And I emailed back and I said, I'm not granting permission for you to come onto my property, period. And I was waiting, hoping they would be there so that I could find out what it's like in jail, maybe. And nobody showed up Tuesday, day before yesterday. Nobody showed up. So, you know, maybe they don't really have as much authority as they think they have. When they did come out, that particular crew was a seismic crew. They went up and took plates up on near the tower sites and pounded on them with a sledgehammer with a computer or something to that effect. And I told them, you know, can you just show me something that says that you have a card, this crew. None of them had a card. I said, nothing on their truck. There were 5 of them. Some were the biologists, anthropologists, whatever they were. They call them their monitoring. They go up and I think they come back and write a report saying everything was cool up there, you know, from all their different respect. And I said, show me anything. And the only thing they got was I saw some inter-company memos, and then there was one code that they didn't know what it was. And so I said, well, I'd really like to keep you off the property, because my goal is to slow you down. I know I can't stop you, but I want to slow you down and put as many roadblocks in your way as I can, so that altogether more people can find out about this, and maybe we can stop this stupid thing from going through here. And so he said, well, we'll have to call Sempra Security. And meantime, they were going to go up on another hill, and I said, you need to call while you're up there, because cell phones don't work down here. So call Sempra while you're up there. And when they came back down an hour or so later, they had called Sempra. So we waited, and sorry to say, I only delayed them about 4.5 hours altogether, but it was some delay anyway. And so I waited for Sempra to come out, and 2 gentlemen came out. I wanted to make sure that I give them credit. Mark Myers and Ron Shankles. And those are, I think they were retired police officers, if I understood right. A couple of gray-haired guys that, you know, very distinguished gentlemen, who let me know that the next thing on the agenda was that they were going to go to the sheriff and that I was going to jail. And I said, well, I've never met a sheriff I didn't like in East County, and I've never been to jail before. So, you know,